Grief is one of the most uncomfortable experiences we will ever have during the course of our lives. And there's this interesting belief within spiritual communities that states grief blocks spirit communication, which means if you're grieving, it may make it difficult for the spirits of your loved ones to come through to you. And today I want to challenge those beliefs. So who am I to do that? Well, let me introduce myself. My name is Nicole Guillaume and I'm a psychic medium. I not only help people to connect with their loved ones on the other side, but I also help them to accept, embrace, and enhance their own spiritual nature. And in this video, I want to help you to do both. So one of the things that I've learned as a psychic medium is that everyone is in a different state of grief, because grief isn't an emotion, it's an experience. It's also a process. And if we've ever loved someone, we will experience grief. If we've ever loved something and that thing is taken away from us, we will experience grief. Grief comes to us in a variety of forms, and there's no cookie cutter predictable way that we will experience grief. We know that it accompanies a lot of different emotions: anger, sadness, feelings of betrayal and rejection, confusion, overwhelm. A lot of times grief can look like depression. But grief, oddly enough, can also look like the opposite of how we think it should look. Someone who is grieving may be overproductive, may be very anxious, may throw themselves into work, into health and fitness, maybe even into an unhealthier binge like eating or alcoholism. So grief affects us all in different ways. And because of that, grief has gotten a bad rap. A lot of people think of grief as being this negative emotion, but it isn't. Grief is a form of love. Grief states that you'll miss someone so much that you're having a hard time functioning and being okay when you notice their absence in your life. In short, you miss someone so much that it hurts. That is not a negative emotion. That is a heartfelt, genuine, and difficult, yet loving experience. And so I want you to know that as a psychic medium, I have worked with many different people who are very heavy into their emotions of grief because their loved one was taken away from them recently, or they were cut off from their job, or their home went into foreclosure. Oh, these terrible things happened to them at once. So they're grieving, and they come to me so that I can reach out to the spirit world for help. And guess what? 9 times out of 10, the spirit world answers. The spirit world does not refuse to communicate with someone because they are grieving. In fact, what I have found is that spirit communication can actually be very prevalent and most loudest when the grief is new, because the passing is new, the loss is new, it's all very fresh. And I want you to know that, because I don't want you to fall into that belief system that says, I can't communicate with my loved one. I'm not even going to try because I'm in the beginning stages of grief. I'm overwhelmed. I don't want to get out of bed. I am so sad and angry and feel so betrayed beyond words that I know my loved one won't come through for me because I feel too much. And that sadness and that overwhelm is going to create a barrier that prevents them from getting to me. I want you to know that is not true. Your loved one on the other side loves you so much, and your loved one wants to communicate with you too. Imagine this. Imagine that you are coming home from work and you have had an absolutely terrible day, And when you walk through the door, your partner, whether that is your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whoever that is, your partner refuses to talk to you because you've had this really bad day. And you want to share with your partner your experience, what happened. You want to tell them about how your boss treated you unfairly and how this project didn't meet its deadline and how you're thinking about quitting because you think there's a possibility you might get fired. And so as you're holding on to this story, this scenario, these feelings, you want to share this with your partner, but your partner decides to just ignore you, doesn't even look at you, won't talk to you, goes into the other room, leaves the house. By the way, in real life, if anyone does that to you, that's abuse. I just feel like I should put that out there because I could feel certain people saying that's exactly what happens in my actual life. I want you to know that's abuse. We're not talking about that so much today. I'm just using this as an example, but know that that's a form of gaslighting and that's not okay. So going back to this as an example of something, that would be the same as our loved one on the other side, noticing our pain, noticing maybe even our guilt, our survivor's guilt, our shame, our anguish, the pain that we feel from their absence and saying nothing, saying nothing, ignoring you. It's like your loved one saying, I'm too upset with you, or I'm too hurt that you're hurting, that I'm not going to talk to you. What sense does that make? If you love someone, you want to give them every sign imaginable to let them know that you're okay, that they're going to be okay, that you don't want them to be sad, right? You're going to do what you can to say, hey, I'm here. I care about you so much. I love you. And I'm frustrated because there isn't much that I can do from this side to get your attention and to help you, but I'm going to do what I can anyway. I'm going to knock on random walls. I'm going to shut the doors in your apartment or in your house. I'm going to tug on the sheets when I can gather enough energy. I'm going to call your name. I'm going to visit you in your dreams. I am going to do what I can simply so that you know I'm still here and I'm watching over you and I care about you very, very much. That is what your loved one on the other side is going through. So it's not grief that blocks the communication. It's something else. But I want you to understand something about grief. And I think the best way for me to explain that to you is to share a quote with you that I read recently that really touched my heart. And I think it'll touch yours too. And so here it is. Grief, I've learned, is really just love. It's all the love you want to give but cannot. All that unspent love gathers up in the corners of your eyes, the lump in your throat, and in the hollow part of your chest. Grief is just love with no place to go. And that quote is attributed to Jamie Anderson. And I love that so much, how he explains grief is love. Grief is the lump in your throat. Grief is love with nowhere to go. And that makes so much sense because when our loved one is now in spirit, we still miss them, we still love them, but we don't have that physical presence to project that love out towards. We don't have their physical presence, that physical body that we can hug, that we can hold, that we can physically hear, that we can sense as they walk into the room. That's all gone. And that's really difficult. But I want you to know this too. A lot of times when you listen to different law of attraction teachers, or even when you pay attention to teachers who teach mediumship, one of the things that they will teach you is that love is the highest vibration. Well, if grief is a form of love, what does that mean vibration-wise? It means that grief is a high form of vibration too, right? Because grief is love. Grief is love with no place to go. And if we can adopt this idea and adapt it into our lifestyle, then we can remind ourselves that grief isn't going to prevent our spirit communication. It's going to amplify it. It's actually going to make it much better. So if you're wanting to connect with your loved one on the other side, either by your own intuitive abilities or through a tool, a divination tool, such as a pendulum, oracle cards, or even a Ouija board, that's a possibility too. If you want to connect with your loved one through a medium, then keep in mind that all of these methods are available to you because grief is a form of love, and love is the highest vibration, and love is the amplifier that allows us to make spirit communication easier, not more difficult. That said, it's not grief that blocks the experience. It can be certain things like anger, self-hatred. And it's when those emotions are so big that they overcome us that spirit communication, though not impossible, may be difficult. And I think a lot of times what happens is as people are grieving, spirit very much comes through. Spirit does an amazing job of coming through. But because we're in our grief, our mind starts to play tricks on us because we know how badly we want to connect with our loved ones. Like, we know what that would mean to us if our loved one were to pop in and say hi and say they love us and said they care about us and say they're sorry and say all the things that we want to hear or all the things we want to know. It would mean the world to us. In fact, it might even invoke a form of healing. But we prevent ourselves from having that experience because we get so caught up with the ideas that spirit communication was just in our head. That paranormal experience was our mind playing tricks on us. Or worst of all, we might think that that spirit of our loved one who's coming through to us is actually the spirit of a trickster, of a being that's wanting to trick us. And so we become so afraid and so fearful of letting the love in from the other side that we block it, that we still receive the messages, we still see the signs, but we close the door on it because we say, no, that can't be true, that can't be right. And then we make the mistake of turning to other people and asking them to either validate that experience for us or to invalidate it. And I think that sometimes people subconsciously want to be invalidated because if they are told that, yeah, that's just in your head or this is impossible, then it almost lets them off the hook from trying to keep that relationship going, when really maybe what they want and what they need is to be able to put that in the past, heal, and move on. And maybe there's a form of guilt associated with thinking and feeling that way. And I want you to know that if that's where you are, where your loved one has passed away, and you kind of want to leave that relationship in the past and move on for whatever reasons, that is okay. You still have your life to live here. You're still on planet Earth. It is absolutely okay and understandable for you to want to move forward. And acknowledging the spirit communication that's coming through doesn't mean that you're holding on to your loved one. Doesn't mean you're preventing them from crossing over. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to move on from the pain and the grief and the loss and maybe the complicated relationship you had with that person at some point. What it means, or what it couldn't mean, is that they're coming through to say goodbye. They're coming through one more time to say, I love you, I care about you, I wish you luck, I want you to know I'm okay, and I know you're going to be okay, and I want you to move on. And if that's what you need, then accept that. Embrace that. Know it's okay if that's your experience. And for the rest of you, you don't want that to be your experience. You want your loved one to be here, but you also don't want to be going crazy, right? You don't want to be making things up because you value honesty and integrity, and you value the hard truth. So for you, you would rather know that you're making this up than for you to indulge in some type of fantasy, and that is totally understandable. However, spirits do have this amazing way of coming through, and if you believe your loved one is coming through, then I believe your loved one is coming through, and you don't have to go to other people and ask for their permission to believe and to trust your own experience. You can tune into yourself. You are an adult. You are a person who is capable of making their own wise decisions, and you can embrace and accept and trust that experience as the holy, loving moment that it is. And if you want to continue that relationship with your loved one on the other side, then you continue to show that you're grateful for those experiences, because the more gratitude you show and the more that you acknowledge these experiences when they come up, whether they come up as synchronicity or songs on the radio or the TV turning on itself or the voice in your head, right? Our loved ones can speak to us as this voice in our head. Or some of you have had that experience where your loved one actually spoke out loud and you can hear them with your physical ears. When you acknowledge those experiences, Spirit's like, yes, I did it. I got the message through. This is great. And it also gives them feedback because they know that whatever they did to get through to us worked. It worked. And so now they have the motivation to continue doing that because you acknowledge the sign, you acknowledge that it worked, you were accepting of it, and now Spirit knows they can rely on that sign because you had a positive response to it. And if we don't have a positive response to the signs and the communication that they're sending to us, they'll try to find other ways until they exhaust themselves. And we don't want to do that to them. That's not fair. We don't know what lengths they're going through to get those messages to us. So we always want to be grateful and we want to acknowledge them when that happens. And gratefulness and gratitude when you're grieving and when your loved one is coming through and giving those messages can look like tears, can look like, you know, that ugly cry when you're just like your face is contorted and you're shaking, and that can be a form of gratitude because you're so overwhelmed by the fact that that experience took place that your body becomes overwhelmed with all those emotions, and you know that something beautiful and wonderful just happened. So you can have the ugly cries. It's okay. You can smile. You can even be in denial of it for a little bit, because when spirit communication first starts, especially if we're not used to it or, you know, we're not sure how we feel about that, it can definitely mess with our minds for a little bit. And so it's absolutely okay if confusion is your first response. But once you get past that and once you can really remind yourself, okay, I had this experience. I heard this person. I heard my loved one. I heard a tapping on the door. I saw what it was saw. Like, I trust my eyes and I trust that I saw this. Or I trust my mind and I trust that I heard this. Put your trust back to yourself. You know what experience you had. You can question it at first, sure, but then remind yourself to talk productively about your experience. I don't want to say think positively because that's a whole different rabbit hole for another time. But think productively, think wisely. You can trust yourself. You can trust your emotions. You can trust your experience because you are a trustworthy person, right? You know that your eyes work just fine. You know that your brain works just fine. You know, with the additional or the occasional head fog and whatnot, you're in working order. Losing someone and being in grief doesn't break us. It doesn't break us. When we're in grief and maybe we can't eat for a while, or we overeat, or we eat a lot of ice cream, or we sleep too much, or we can't sleep at all. That is our body's normal response to that type of pain. So your body is doing what it's supposed to be doing in times of stress. So you're not broken, you're working just fine. And it may take a while, because it'll take a while for your body and your mind and your energy to shift back or shift into that space where you feel relatively okay. But our body has internal and physical expressions and behaviors that switch on when we're dealing with stress or with pain. And since those responses are uncomfortable, right? Crying is uncomfortable. Being unable to sleep because we're so stressed out is uncomfortable. We understandably want to get to a point where we feel better. And we understandably think that maybe we're broken. But again, you're not broken. Your body's doing what it's meant to do in times of stress. Your mind is doing what it's meant to do in times of pain. Remember, your mind and your body are wired for survival. So when you go through a loss like this, your body and your mind start to analyze and reanalyze and overanalyze every single scenario that took place, because it wants to avoid that type of pain in the future. So it's problem solving right now. And it's a frustrating energy to be in. I get it. But it's also very natural and very normal. So again, I want you to know you're not broken. I know half of you watching this don't believe that because you feel so broken. But I'm going to tell you anyway, you're not broken. Your bodily faculties are working exactly as they were designed. And yes, it's uncomfortable. And yes, it's painful. But you're not broken. You're working exactly the way that you were designed to work. That said, I want to invite you to just be open to the possibilities and the probability of your loved one coming through. I want you to give yourself permission to open up to those experiences, because you will have those experiences. Your loved one will find ways to get through to you, no matter how deep you are in your grief. And I know that a few of you are watching this and maybe you've been grieving for a while and you feel like you've never gotten a message from your loved one. And I have a friend who was in a similar situation when her brother passed away. She was devastated and she was absolutely convinced that he never gave her any type of spirit communication. She claimed that she never heard him in the house that they grew up in their mom's house. She never felt his presence. He just never gave any signs. And later on, as the years passed, and I would talk to her more, it turned out that wasn't true. There were many interesting signs that her brother was sending to her from the other side that she had closed her eyes to. And so he was sending signs. She was just choosing to ignore them. And so it's possible that you're in the same situation where signs are happening, but you're just not in a place where you can accept those signs. And there's many different reasons as to why you may be in that situation, why you might be in that energy, and only you know what that reason is. And if you truly do want signs and you haven't gotten any, then I would invite you to just kind of sit with that for a moment and ask yourself, okay, why would I be blocking this? My loved one is coming through, and I know he or she is, because my loved one loves me. That's why it's called the loved one, right? My loved one wants me to know he or she is okay, and they want to communicate with me. So what signs might I be blocking, and why? Why am I doing this? What am I trying to protect myself from? And just see what comes up, because your soul and your mind are infinitely wise. You already know the answer, even if you don't think you do. Once again, know that grief does not block your communication with spirit. Other emotions might be other beliefs might be, but it's never going to be grief, because grief is what? Grief is love. And love is what? Love is a high vibration. So grief, if we use it right, is a high vibration. We just have to remember grief is love. It is love. And it is probably and possibly one of the highest forms of love that there is. It's going to enhance your spirit communication. It's not going to break it. So my friends, I hope that you found this helpful. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, I'd like to welcome you to the Guiding Echoes community. And I'd also like to invite you to subscribe to this channel. Here on this channel, we talk about psychic development. We talk about trusting your experiences as an intuitive person. And of course, we talk about things like spirit communication and the afterlife. So if that's something you're interested in, be sure you hit that subscribe button and also hit the bell icon so you can be notified when I release new videos in the future. Also, when you get a chance, be sure that you check out these videos to the side, because they will answer more of the questions you have about your loved ones and spirit communication. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.